welcome to another episode of the Tell Not Show. As always, we're your hosts. We have the fabulous, you're on the other side of me this time, right? The fabulous and wonderful Kirsha Fox. She's the author of the Deception and Justice series, homeschool mom of 4, avid reader and gamer.
And my co-host is Julia J.K. Allen. She's an editor, author, and author coach. She's a fantasy and horror author who loves to put magic in everything. Thank you so much for joining us. Our guest tonight is J.M. Shaw. She's the author of the Callum Walker series. She has a background in X-ray technology, psychology, and personal training, as well as various personal interests in martial arts, airsoft, and running. A diagnosis of autism for herself and both her sons has begun an incredible journey of understanding, acceptance, and lifelong learning. Welcome, J.M. Shaw.
Welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was very excited. I do love me a Canadian. My grandpa was from Canada, so I'm in Michigan too. So I'm always like, I'm your neighbor down south. So yes. I love me some Canadians. Yes.
Well, I'm actually first-generation Canadian, so my family's from the U.S.
Oh, very nice. Yes, I just like that accent is like home for me though. I love it. Tell us a little bit about your author journey. What got you started in writing and what does it look like so far?
So I started writing when I was about 12-ish. My mom bought me a typewriter. I was on homeschooling, so my mom bought me a typewriter. Yes, I'm that old. And I started kind of writing from there. I needed an outlet at the time. Just kind of, starting into teenagerhood and stuff, and didn't have anybody to talk to. So I used my writing as an outlet, and it just became sort of a hobby. And then it was a passion, and now it's just cheaper than therapy. And I've been writing now for, to date myself, over 30 years.
Right. I love that. It's cheaper than therapy. So funny. It's so true. Writing is so therapeutic for like a number of reasons, right? Better out than in, I always say, for a lot of things.
Yes. Yes.
I love that. Do you guys remember electric typewriters?
That's what I started with. Yeah. And it had
I had typewriters a little kid.
Back and delete it, and I was like, this is great.
Right. The technology. We thought that was like so developed, and then computers happened more prolifically, but I remember typing away school reports and essays on like the good old electric typewriter, and I thought it was so cool and newfangled.
Yeah,
so we are just as old as you.
Writing is so therapeutic. You can really work out so many of your issues, having conversations with yourself, with characters who are both you.
Right.
I used it as a way to kind of, you're getting older, you're experiencing bigger, deeper emotions and stuff, or maybe you're having some anxieties and such that you want to work through. It's what better to create this world and have your characters live those through, and then see how they deal with things, and not have to put yourself into. That's kind of what I used it for. And plus, I mean, my head would explode if I didn't put those ideas out there.
Oh, exactly. Yes. Yeah, no, writing, even in journaling form, any kind of writing, I feel is so therapeutic and helpful. Yeah.
Sometimes just storytelling is in your soul, and you have to do it.
Exactly. Yes, right. I mean, like when they talk about like civilization and history and all that, it comes from the storytelling, tradition. Yeah. So it is definitely such a human thing to tell stories, and so I love it when people embrace that as writers. Yes. But tell us a little bit about the genres you write and why you chose those genres.
So I have written in a lot of different genres, but the only things I don't write in is I don't write in mystery. I'm not smart enough to figure out the whodunits. I don't write spicy romance because nobody has 3 chapters worth of stamina, and there's all enough out there to confuse a whole generation of people. Why would I add to it? And, and I don't, but I tend to write in like anywhere it's going to be action adventure. I get bored really easy. So fantasy is really good for that. Sci-fi is really good for that. Anything action adventure wise. I like a little bit of horror every now and then, although I can't write off, or I stop and have to question my sanity and scare myself. So I didn't intend to write this series until I was watching a show on Netflix called Merlin, and I thought, I have an idea.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of started out with the series kind of started out with the question of what if fairy tales were more than stories and monsters were flesh and blood? We just didn't know it. And I kind of ran with that.
Right. Yeah, no, I love those. I mean, writing is all about those what ifs, right? So the
Mhm.
scenarios that could possibly happen and exploring those. So that's
Mhm.
great. Merlin is a fun show. I didn't watch too much of it, but I remember when it like first came out. I caught a few bits of the first season. And it's a really, really fun show. And the whole
Mhm.
concept of like, what if Merlin was Merlin helping out King Arthur and he could
Yeah.
like magic was illegal, right? So I love that
Yeah.
premise.
Yeah, it just kinda got me
Yeah,
thinking about things, but I'm also a very big Supernatural TV fan. I like the
sure.
Lord of the
Mhm.
Rings, I love the Game of Thrones, and I've kinda, taken inspiration from every little bit of influence that has grown up with me. I started reading the Odd Thomas series, I think in my 20s, by Dean Koontz, and that gave me a lot
Mm.
of inspiration for my protagonist, kind of like the unlikely hero kinda thing.
Yeah,
So
unwitting, right? They never intended to be the hero. They're kind of pushed into that position and see
exactly.
what to do with it. Oh, I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's something about that kind of hero that like really I'm like, ooh, that's my sweet spot, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to root for somebody who's, like, got a big head and, an oversized.
Right, right, right. And I'm also not a huge fan of like the morally gray anti-heroes as
Mhm.
well because I'm just like if they're just doing things randomly and they don't because it's like hard to like well one it's like if somebody's a jerk like do you really
Yes.
want to read 200 pages about a jerk and what he does like no
Yeah,
not really so
yeah,
yeah for me I think that sweet spot is like the hero that doesn't walk the yoke but
very
takes it
much.
up because somebody has to yeah that's my
Exactly,
favorite
yeah,
yeah
and that's definitely that describes my hero to a T, and,
yeah
it was pointed out to me because, to kinda sum up my series, there's our world, our time, coexisting magical realm, there's a
Mhm.
veil that separates us. We can't see or cross this veil because we don't have magic, but these creatures that do can and have, and they've been the source of inspiration for our
Oh,
mythologies. And then
right
Callum Walker is my protagonist. He's a young man born with the ability to use magic, doesn't know why, he's trying to make the most of it and gets caught up in what's going
Mhm.
on in this magical realm. And then through the series, we see him trying to figure out who he is, where he fits in, because he's too magic for here, but too human for there, and master his
oh I
abilities.
love it yeah
And somebody
that
pointed out to me in one of my book signings, and it didn't even occur to me that it sounds like it's similar to my journey with autism, trying to feel like
right
where I fit into this world. I was like, oh, you know,
Right, right. It comes out
Yes,
of us, in
you're
these
not quite
prolific
there.
ways.
You're not
yeah,
quite there. Yeah.
Mhm.
You're somewhere caught in the middle and trying to make sense of how the world works.
exactly. Not
Right,
necessarily
where do
wanting
I
to be
fit
in a
in?
position of trying to make
Mhm,
sense of it, but trying to make sense nonetheless, and feeling different. Like
mhm.
there's something different about you that what is it? How do you manage it? And that kind of such. And
Right, I can relate to that struggle as well, being, like, biracial, right? Being half
Mhm.
of one thing, but not quite either or, right? You're
Yes.
always a little different and finding your place to fit in. Mhm. Yeah, your story sounds fascinating, though. I'm definitely checking it out as soon as we get off,
Mhm.
because I'm like, this is right up my alley. This sounds amazing. Yeah.
So yeah, it sounds like it's like urban fantasy.
It starts out kind of urban fantasy. There's our world is
Mhm.
the modern day, the modern time. In the magical realm, it's very medieval like. They
Mhm.
don't need technology,
Right.
so they get by on magic, and it's very one with nature, living off the land, big medieval castles. Because magic
Mhm.
and medieval is synonymous in my mind, and very much Celtic
Right.
in origin. So
Mhm.
Love that. Yes, yes. It's
Right.
kind of nice when you can have the best of both worlds of a modern day setting and a historical setting, right? Yeah.
mhm. Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about your writing process? How do you go from like idea to finished draft?
Oh gosh. I mull over my ideas a bit. I'm not necessarily a big plotter. I know where I want to start. I know where to end, and I know approximately what needs to happen in the middle, but the rest I just sort of let happen. And sometimes I get into the zone in writing. I just let my mind wander, and it will take me to places that I thought, oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that was going to happen. I'm just along for the ride. And I've gotten some good compliments on those. And then other times, like I said, I stop and question my sanity. um,
Right?
But for me, it's, I don't really do a lot of planning. I just let my imagination flow and see where it goes. And sometimes I do rewind and start again and go off on a different tangent. I love those tangents.
Right. Life is all about those tangents. No, I mean, those side quests is really like, I'm always doing side quests and getting distracted by that.
Yeah.
I really relate to that because like I do plot, but like I'll get halfway through a thing and I'll be like, wait, like something else strikes you and you just turn left and you take it in a completely different direction and you have to sort of like either scoot the rest of it in line or just off it goes. This is better now.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like if I write out, okay, this is what needs to happen in every chapter, I get in a brief idea of what needs to happen, but I don't plot out like this needs to happen and then this and then this and then this, because then it feels very restrictive and I don't feel like I can let those creative juices flow. So
yes.
Right. Right. Yeah, my sister's kind of similar to where if she figures too much out beforehand, then it kind of loses the magic for her. She likes to discover as she writes a little bit more. I just get filled with existential dread staring at a blank page. Like, we're like, oh my gosh, I have to have a goal and know what I'm doing when I sit down. Like, I do like to discover as I go, but it's just like, if I know, like, oh, I want to work on this relationship between these two characters, it makes it a lot easier for me to settle into the writing bit.
Yes. Sometimes I've done random scenes where I'm just like, I just have this random scene, but it's not really part of this story, but it may be used later. So I just have
absolutely. Yeah, if I have a clear enough scene or a clear enough like idea, like I sketch it out with words and find it, like it usually finds its way in. You click it in like a puzzle piece and it fits.
Yes.
You just weren't sure where it was going to go yet.
No, I love those little moments. And then it's like, I also like never delete anything. So I'll have like leftovers and then the graveyard. So it's like leftovers, I'm like probably going to use again for most definitely because I like something about that element. And then the graveyard is just, I go through it every now and then for ideas, right? Like, spark any ideas off of it.
They're bits and pieces of yourself, even if it's something like I've got things that I've written when I was 13 years old and I cringe. They're very cringy.
Right.
Because I've changed so much in my writing, but it's still part of me. It's like a photograph, right?
Yes, I love that. Yeah, little snapshots of who we were. Yeah, that's great. So do you think that characters or plot are kind of what you focus on more?
I focus a lot more, I think, on character development. I've read some stories that all the characters are just basically carbon copies of themselves. And I absolutely hated it. It was horrible. I didn't feel like any of the characters had depth because they were all the same. So I've tried really hard to make all of my characters have not only depth, but they also have their own motivations, their own histories. They have their own, all the different beings of peoples and groups of peoples in the magical realm, like elves, fairies, dwarves, dryads, those kind of things. They all have their own history, their own political systems, their own traditions and religions and all that kind of stuff. And I think that helps to form these characters. Obviously, I will pick out different characters from each race, and they will, if they're a main character, they'll have a little more in depth than, the passing elf that you meet and you say,
right. Yeah, those little side background characters right there. Yes. So how do you get to know your characters?
I don't think that I'm one. I know somebody asked me, is like, am I my characters? I said, no, I don't think I'm my character, but I think there's bits and pieces of me in every character. And I think that ties me in with them. So little bits of my personality. There's just exploring different sides of myself, I suppose.
Right. We put little bits of what we love and hate about ourselves into our characters all the time. Yeah. But I know you said you weren't big on plotting, but like, do you like free write? Like, how do you really get to like know your characters, or they just kind of spring into your mind?
Well, if I'm stuck on a spot and I'm not sure how they're going to react, I tend to plot them out in my head. I will go for a walk at the end of the day. It used to be my stress relief to kind of get away from things, because I used to homeschool as well, and it's very busy and you can't, you need some time away from the kids. You love them to death, but
Yes, homeschool. And
So
it's
I would go out and put on my headphones and listen to my music
Right,
and
right.
my mind wander and explore things from trying to put myself in their shoes. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I know their history, I know their motivations. What would they react to in these different situations?
Right,
And they
right.
may not be situations I put in my book, but it's like, how would they go shopping for groceries kind of thing? How would they deal with
Right,
some,
right.
like if they got hit every single red light on the way to their shop, how would they react to different things and just to see how kind of
Right. Yeah, no, I know a lot of people that kind of like act out or role play what their character is doing in the scene to kind of really figure out the scene themselves and stuff, which can be a really fun exercise to do. I love that going for a walk too, because it's like a way of de-stressing, but
Oh,
also like giving your body something to do while your mind just works in the
yeah.
background.
And
I
I
love those
literally
for, yeah.
play it through as a video in my head,
Mhm.
and I've done that for years. Apparently not everybody can do that. I didn't know that.
No.
It's just something I've done for years and listen to my music.
Yeah.
A good tempo, good beat, good, toe tapping song if I'm in an action scene in my thoughts, or a really slow melodic song if it's got to be more
Mhm.
emotional.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. No, music is a great way of accessing those emotions and like
Mhm.
imbuing them with the scenes that you're writing as well. I love that.
that sounds really immersive.
Mhm.
You're just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
your body is busy and you're just like letting your brain just
Oh,
go
yeah.
free.
The
And I
daydreaming just happened. Yes, I
Yeah,
love it.
exactly, and that's kind of part of my writing process too, is when I am writing, I literally do visualize it as a movie reel in my head, and I'm writing
Mhm.
down what I see. If I don't like it, like I said, I rewind it and play it again, see where
Mhm.
it goes. If it goes
Yes.
Mhm.
the direction.
Right,
Sometimes I
right.
feel like a director. You're like, okay, guys, from the top, run it
Oh,
again.
yes, they
This
never
time with more
Right.
feeling, you know?
This
So when
time
people ask me, it's like, how would you feel if your book was made into a movie? It's like, "Oh, that'd be kinda cool, but you know what? I don't have to pay for these special effects, so."
Mhm.
right, exactly. Yeah, no, no, it would be nice. Um, we just talked to somebody who has it was it aphantasia, so what they call it,
Mhm.
I believe, right? So I also struggle with visualizing myself, but they were just asking for like general tips and stuff. For me, everything is like very word centered
Mhm.
in my mind. Like I
Yeah.
have the narrator, I have the like many people talking in my head and stuff, rather than the visuals. But like there's so many helpful things like apps of like floor
Mhm.
plans even. So if you have struggles with visualizing, you can just use apps to be like, okay, how does this building look to unfold? So you
Yes.
can kind of work around that if you don't have that movie playing in your head.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
like plenty you can do. Yeah, because it's just like, oh my gosh, I
Well, and I
wish.
discovered I
That'd be so
discovered, like,
fun.
last year I discovered that I have, mild dyslexia, which I didn't realize
Yes,
until looking back
okay,
it makes sense.
yeah.
And so when I'm writing and my proofreaders, they're like, "Yeah, I can tell you were in a hurry here because you missed all the little words," like the ofs
Oh,
and
right.
and does,
Yeah,
and I'm like, "Yes," because
yeah.
I literally don't see them. So I get my computer,
Right.
there's always these things that can help you, and I get my computer to literally read it to me. It may not have the same
Yes,
information,
yes,
but it doesn't miss those words, so
yes, yes. No,
Mhm.
technology has really made things
Mhm.
so much easier to like catch those little quirks that we have, right?
Mhm.
Being able to hear your work read back to you is such a useful tool for editing and
Oh, yeah.
making sure like the dialogue sounds good and stuff too. Those
Yeah.
little
Mhm.
It just
tips
uses
are so
another
helpful.
sense, another part of your brain, right? I'm being
Yeah, yeah.
it sounds like you're very auditory in your, how you perceive the world. I'm very visual, but
Mm.
if I let it read it to me, then that activates that auditory as well.
Mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, that's really great. I used to write every story by hand because I really liked how creativity was
Yeah.
interplayed with the motion
Another
of
Yes.
adding another sense to it of
Yeah,
writing it out.
yes.
Mhm.
Exactly.
So, do you have a favorite author and what is something that they do best?
One of my favorite authors is Margaret Atwood, and I love
Mhm.
how
Yeah.
she likes to deal with, a lot of what ifs. So she's very similar to me. I mean, I also like Stephen King as well because he does the same
Mhm.
thing. So they don't restrict themselves to any specific, genre per se. They tend to explore different ideas that come to their brain, but they also do a lot of character development, especially Margaret Atwood. I've noticed in a lot of the books that I've read from her anyway, is she does focus a lot more on character development, and that's kind of heart, strikes home. I love that character development.
Is there something that you say you have learned from the writing process?
I still am struggling to learn that I need to write the story that's coming from my heart. If I try to write to please everybody else, it becomes work and it's no longer fun, and I really lose that creative juice. And although I've always wanted to be a published author, I can remember back from, way young, it's, I didn't want to be an author because it was work. I wanted to be an author because it was how I can express myself. But I can't express myself if I'm trying to please everybody.
Right. And the thing is if you enjoy it, someone else out there in the world is going to enjoy it. You can't be the only one with that taste and, you know what I mean, level of interest in things. So definitely write for yourself, because you will find your audience eventually, I feel like.
Exactly. And I'm also learning that I have no idea how to use commas. So I'm trying to learn from the editor that I've worked with. It's like, okay, you changed 2 words in that sentence and it's completely different. Show me your magic, please.
Right. No, commas is one of my special interests. I feel like if I had special interests, commas would be one of them. But I find that most writers and most authors are like, we have editors for a reason, right? So I don't have to learn all those comma rules.
Yes.
So you're in very good company if they confuse you. Yeah.
I feel bad because I have hunted down to find editors saying, okay, I'm going to hire you as an editor, but I also want you to teach me everything you know. And, every has their own way of doing things. Like some like a lot of dialogue tags, for example, and some don't. Some like a lot more body beats and some don't. And some, it's just, they all have their own way of doing things. But by learning all the different ways of doing things, I think I'm just kind of developing my voice a little stronger.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Yeah.
You do learn things with every new book, with every new pass. You learn something.
And I know I have challenged myself in writing with each book. The 3rd book that I published last year, which is The Fractured Veil. It's the 3rd book in my series. And it was a real big step out of my comfort zone, not so much because of what was happening in the story, although there was a bit of that, but because I was delving more into psychological issues that I wasn't as familiar with. So I had to do a lot more research on it. But that being said, I think it made me a better writer in the end.
That's fantastic, right? When we can learn from the process and really improve and deepen our skills like that way. That's so wonderful. I love when that happens. Because like one nice thing about, like, I studied creative writing at college, and one nice thing about it is you're getting feedback. Because like everyone always says, oh, get your 10,000 hours and you're going to get better. But you really need somebody giving you feedback along the way, whether that's editors that you're learning from or writing groups that you're involved in and things like that. Because if you're doing 10,000 hours and you're not getting any input, how are you getting better, right? You're just practicing what you know. Exactly. So I love that you take the advantage of learning from everyone that you're working with. And keep improving and stuff.
Yes.
So I love that.
I kind of feel bad because I'm picking everybody's brain and feel like I'm like sapping their strength. Silly.
Oh no. I'm sure they're happy to share with you. Because like I said, who was it? I want to say it was Aristotle. There was a famous person back in the day who said, like, you can really learn something from everyone that you meet. So try and learn from figure out what they have to teach you from every person that you meet in your life, whether it's that stranger or not. So I think that, like, that's such a great way of approaching things, of like, hey, you're going to help me on my story and I'm going to pick your brain while we do it.
Exactly. And I mean, I've done a lot of people watching over the years too, trying to figure out, because I couldn't understand. I remember not being able to talk to people because I didn't know how to talk to people. So I started making
the social cues.
So said this. Oh, this is the response. Hey, there was a smile. That must be what I need to say if somebody says this to me. And I had no
right.
And, I told my son about that because he was the same way. He didn't know how to talk to people. But because I did that, and then it became a habit to just sort of world watch, I call it, not just people watching, but world watching, and like thinking, what if our houses could fly, or some silly thing like that? Just mind wander and do the what if. I got the what if award in high school.
Yeah. No, I love that, because that is like the essence of storytelling, is that boils down to that what if.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. you could tell a new author one
Mhm.
thing, what advice would you give them?
Oh goodness, persistence.
Mm,
it's not a race, it's a marathon. And it's gonna
absolutely.
take you a lot of years and it's gonna take you a long time. And every single book that you write is gonna give you a little bit of skills going forward. And I mean, if you're looking for agents and publishers, that's where persistent comes in a lot more often and stuff. But there's other options out there besides that.
Mhm.
And if you keep up the good fight, you'll get somewhere in the end. It's just most people give up before they get there.
Persistence is such a good
Absolutely.
answer. I
Mhm.
It
love that
is. It
so much.
really is.
There are so many hurdles
Especially
you have to
mhm.
jump, and you have to keep going with it and not let them stop you from your dream.
Exactly, and I mean, there's so many
Right.
people out there. Every book signing I go to, every event that I attend, I'm learning something new from somebody who's every single
Mhm.
time, like, maybe 1 or 2 people, and they'll say something that I'll be like, "I didn't realize that. I hadn't thought about that," and, "Oh, I didn't know I needed
Right.
to look that up," and, or connect you with somebody that might be very helpful to building your career or giving you that push to the next level.
Exactly. Yes, yes. Take advantage of the writing community because it's an
Mhm.
amazing one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a very lonely profession, I mean,
It
E even
can
though
be.
talk to other
Yes.
authors, we end up talking to the walls, and when they start answering
Right,
you
right.
have to kinda worry a little bit, but, you
When the
know,
wallpaper turns yellow, you gotta
the
Right, right,
wallpaper's
right.
turning yellow, you should stop smoking or maybe, clean the walls.
Mhm.
Oh, I was just referencing the short story, but
I
yeah.
I know, I think literally, and that's part of
Right.
the problem, so
It's true though, yes, when you smoke, your walls do turn yellow too.
it's true, they only know that because I worked in a restaurant as a teenager and I had to wash the walls, and they were
Yeah,
always yellow
right.
and
Oh
smoking
my god,
smoking
right, the
stuff, so,
nicotine stains, oh
yeah,
goodness.
so
Yes, yeah, it's hard to believe, but we used to be able to smoke in restaurants and just yeah.
yes, I'm that
Wild
old.
times,
They had the
wild
smoking
times
section
be
and the non-smoking section, but nobody cared.
right, it's not like they were, like, partitioned, let's be
Yeah,
honest. It was
just
like you
throwing
were
the
sitting right
ashtrays
next to
in with
the
the
smoking section, you
dishwasher.
were just yeah.
Yeah, it's still like that in Europe. I remember going
Right.
there a long time ago, many, many years ago, and I was just, like, gobsmacked of, like, "What
Mhm.
do you mean you're
Right.
smoking in the restaurant? Like, what are you
Yeah,
doing?" And
Right, right.
I
no
know.
one
Oh my
seemed
gosh, the
bothered
thing
at
that
all.
kills me
Yeah.
the thing that kills
Future
me about Europe
generations,
is
we'll
the
never know.
lack of yeah, the lack of air conditioning in Europe. Oh my
Yes.
god.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, we went out and I brought my boys. My boys are 8 and 10, and I took them out just to look at all the Halloween decorations,
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
saw the
yeah.
skeleton phone with the little dial and all the numbers, and they're like,
And they were
"That
like,
is
"What is
really neat, there's
that?"
no buttons," and I'm like, "Oh, let me show you." Yes.
Rotary style,
Yeah, it's
right.
like a whole generation of kids that and, like, people are gonna grow up and they're gonna have
Yeah.
no idea.
Well, they do this for the phone instead of this now because it looks like
Yes.
it
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
phones all look like
"Oh, I
this,
did
so they
this."
Love it.
yeah.
So
I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, it's
They
so
don't do
funny."
this
And
for
then
photos.
oh, okay, I do this for photos.
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
it's
it's
real
that, and then,
Instead they
like,
do right.
'cause we remember
I
the old
remember
ways.
I had a teenager ask why they said hang up the phone because they didn't realize, like, we used to literally hang up
That's
the
why it's
phone
called hanging up the phone.
and I love how satisfying that slam was when you were angry and you're
Oh,
just like,
yes.
"Ah," hanging up
Yes.
on
Mhm.
somebody and then you get the
Yeah,
bell
or
sound
or,
because
like,
you slammed it
talking
home.
yeah, like, before you had the cordless phones and stuff and you'd be on the phone, like, this
Mhm.
playing with the
And you're playing
cord.
with the cord, yeah, wrapping it around you or
Yeah,
whatever, yeah.
yeah. If it's long enough, you can go into the other room around the corner, take it into the bathroom, and,
Right,
like, slide it under
exactly,
the
the
door.
kitchen phone and you're, like, down in the hallway. Yep, great
Yeah,
time, great time.
yeah, covering the so
Oh.
they don't hear me.
Yeah.
I can't be
Right,
the only
or
one
you're
who
on the internet and your mom needs the phone, you're just like, "Gotta get
yes,
off,
you pick up the phone
guys.
and go
See you later." Yeah. Right,
Mhm.
the noises was a nightmare.
yes.
Do you have a favorite part of writing?
Uh, I don't know. I think all of it is my favorite. Well, I can tell you what I don't like is I don't like editing,
Yeah,
but
sure.
it's kind of part and parcel. You can't have a clean house without cleaning it first, right? Um,
Right.
I like the daydreaming before I put the words on paper because it's a whole lot faster than actually writing it down. So
Right, just
yeah,
figuring out the story.
what I'm gonna
Mhm.
do. And I do like exploring different scenarios and figuring out how my characters would react to different life things like
Yeah.
grocery shopping and sitting in line in Tim's and you know.
What influences your writing?
Oh, goodness. Like, on a daily basis, I just think looking at the world, like those walks that I do where I
Mhm,
let my mind
mhm,
wander, it doesn't necessarily have to involve my story or my characters. It just sort of exploring different things and ideas. And
mhm.
I don't tend to watch a lot of movies and such, but, I do watch a lot of short clips on YouTube,
Right.
and sometimes they give me ideas there, like, "Hey, I was thinking about" oh, can't remember, it was skating, like, on
Mm,
skateboards, for example, and then I'm thinking, "Well, what if they could fly?" What if they were
mhm,
flying boards
mhm.
instead, like on the old, Back to the Future movie and stuff?
Right, right. Yeah.
And I have been trying to read a lot more because going and doing book signings, and unfortunately, I hear a lot of book recommendations. Oh, you should read this and you should read that. And so now I have a
Right,
huge
right.
to-be read list and I'm making my way through it. And so sometimes reading books will help me get ideas for
Mhm,
things. So
mhm.
Oh,
I'm inspired.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. No, I love being inspired by other books, whether it's like the author's voice or like their
Hmm.
descriptions or whatever. There's always something to
Or learn
explore
a new way
inside a
to,
book.
to
Mhm.
describe your character sitting. It's like, right
Right,
into it.
right.
Oh, I never thought about trying
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, I
Mhm.
love reading for that. Reading like an author. Mhm.
Yes. Oh, it can kind of suck, especially I'm reading a
It
series.
can when you just, yeah, wanna read for fun and you're, like, diagnosing and
Yeah,
like, analyzing everything. It can be a
like
lot, but I was, like, born to be an English major, I feel like, because I
my
love
mom is
yeah.
an English major, and I
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
around the time I started writing, she was going for her English degree, and we would drive out to her grandparents' house every weekend, and I get to sit in the
Mhm.
front because I'm the oldest of 5 kids, so I get to sit in the front, but only if I read my mom's books to her
Right,
while
they
she
could
was
talk
driving.
to
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
started out at that point in my life, I was reading Thomas Hardy, Joseph
Mhm,
Conrad, the Brontes,
mhm.
lots and lots of Shakespeare, those kind of things, and that's kind of where my writing style grew. Um,
Right, right.
yeah, it was
That's
very
amazing.
influential.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love Shakespeare too. I really, really enjoy his his plays, so I would not have minded being the front, passenger princess reading with Shakespeare to mom.
Well, I
That would have
didn't
been great.
mind it. There were some stories where I was reading, it's like, "Why did they do that? I wanna kick them. Why'd they do that?" Or some
Right, right.
philosophical thing, it's like,
I
"But
feel like that's how writers are born. We start out
this
reading, and then we're like, "But why did they make that decision instead of this one
It
when
would
they
have
could have
been
if
done
you'd
better
done
if
this?"
this
they
way
had
Yeah.
and
done
done
this.
this, it would've been a whole
Yeah.
different story," but
Yeah, yeah.
It's
But I
even
feel
worse
like
when you
that's how
recognize
they
a
get to
plot hole. Yeah.
I
right.
know,
You're
I'm
like, that shouldn't have worked that way because of this.
yeah.
Like,
There's been a couple
Right,
stories, it's
right.
like where they bring up some topic in the beginning or near to a third of the way in, and then we get to the end, and like, "But wait about this, like,
What
you didn't
yeah, you
descri" or
brought
they
that up.
wrap it up
Yeah,
in,
yeah,
like, one line, it's like, "Oh, yeah, and that happened," and I'm like,
mhm.
"That's not a good explanation." That was, like,
right,
2
right.
chapters worth right there, and you just
Yes.
up in one
Yeah, you
sentence.
They
glossed
make a
over
big
it.
deal about it, and it's barely an inconvenience.
Yeah.
Mm,
Or
mhm.
chalk it up to character
Right.
development, I guess, I don't know.
Mhm. Well, like, obvious plot armor can get kinda
Yes.
tedious
Right,
too,
I think
right?
I was reading this series and, I kept thinking in my head, it's like, I know this is a self-published author, but they need to vary up their settings because there's only so many times they can go sit at a bar, in a bar,
Mm,
talking to
mhm.
people in a bar, and it's like,
Mhm.
come on, gotta go somewhere else.
Right, right. Yeah, I know what you mean though, when it's like gets to be repetitive because it's like the only
Yeah.
yeah.
Not that it was bad, the first 50 times.
No, I noticed like what gets me is like when somebody like when each chapter is like they wake up and it ends when they go to bed. And I'm like, we
Yeah.
don't have to do the day by day breakdown. Like we can change the chapter.
Yeah.
Like I don't like it to be too repetitive like that. So
Yeah, I know.
yeah, yeah.
I've had to be very careful because I am not nice to my protagonists and my character and stuff, and,
Right.
that's one reason why I don't think of my character because I wouldn't survive, and if they met me on the street, they probably wanna strangle me, but I have
Right.
to be careful that they don't, get knocked out in one chapter and wake up in the next and do that too many times.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, they're gonna suffer brain damage.
No, I had that happen. Yeah, as an editor, I have to make those types of suggestions sometimes where I'm like, if
Mhm.
they had another concussion, that's considered like permanent brain damage at this point because they've had three. Like, so you have to, yeah. Or
I've
like when
been hit
people
on
get
the head
hit about the
before.
head.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
exactly.
like, well, maybe break a crib instead, because you don't want to deal with permanent brain damage, traumatic brain injuries and things like that.
Well, I know I got hit one time. Well, not one time, more than once. I mean, I have brothers, so again, I've been knocked out before, and you're not out for hours at a time. You're out for maybe 30 seconds at the most, and if you're out for longer, you just go to the hospital.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, I can kind of, trying to weave things in there that makes sense. And, I'm healthcare background. I'm thinking, well, if you were exhausted to the point where you could barely walk, and you're just like dead on your feet as far as falling, you get hit in the head, you're going to pass out and then you're going to sleep. There's a couple factors going on here. But, working in healthcare gave me a whole new perspective on injuries.
Right. Yeah, that's one thing, like, Hollywood always gets this criticism where they're just like, the guy gets shot and he still, like, comes through and, like, punches the other guy and wins. You know what I mean? Like, they're dealing with injuries that's not very realistic. So I really appreciate when books are realistic for things like that.
I mean, I can understand if you got adrenaline flowing, that plays a
Oh, absolutely. But like, you get shot in the side, it's going to slow you down.
You're not going to keep running at the same speed.
You're just not going to punch out the other guy and win.
Even a full-on runner who's been running marathons their whole life and stuff, if they get a stitch in their side, they're going to slow down,
Absolutely. So I love when things are dealt with realistically. I also really love when they deal with like the after effects of stuff. So the character goes through something traumatic, show the repercussions. Don't just have them gloss on and move on with like the next day.
I love presenting in my novels. I mean, they're action adventure. There's lots going on. But I like to present things like, mental health issues, anxiety, the importance of family and friends. Put those little wholesome messages in there and show them instead of just when I hit them over the head with it. It's like, wholesome message, come on, but kind of put it in there. Like, I think there's a quote that I remember. I fondly remember this because it's a quote from my second book where it's the debate between good and evil, dark and light, and those kind of things, right? And then I put a quote in there. One of the characters saying, well, the darkness is going to scream its presence. The light's going to whisper its arrival. And it's kind of gone to the idea that when we watch the news, we see lots of bad things happening. We see a tiny bit of good things, right? So I kind of that. And kind of wove that in there, we're going to hear a lot more bad things in life than we are going to hear good. We just need to a little better.
Right. Listen for the good.
That's a good quote. Do you ever get writer's block, and how do you overcome it?
I think everybody gets writer's block. Sometimes it's a matter of trying to figure out what's causing it too in some situations. If I've got a lot of things piling on my to-do list, obviously I'm not going to feel very creative. So, there's a lot of environmental things that can impact you, emotional health, mental health, those kind of things can affect writer's block. I try first off to try to figure out, well, what's causing it? Am I super stressed? Do I have this time of year, there's a lot of things going on. I'm less creative. And, giving myself that time to be less creative instead of forcing myself to try to be creative. But I tell you, those walks with my headphones and the video in my head and listening to music, those are definitely helpful. Reading a book is helpful. You never know where you're going to get ideas from. And, just videos and YouTube videos and stuff like that, just watching TikTok on your phone and stuff can give you some ideas for things. And you just have to be open to receiving them and not pushing it, because the harder you try to write, that said, I do try to, keep up the habit of writing, even if I'm having a full-on writer's block, even if it like a paragraph a day. If you do a paragraph a day, I'm still moving forward, right? I'm not going backwards. I'm not deleting anything. I'm just slowly moving forwards and stuff.
I agree. I think that a lot of times, like, it can be from burnout or doing too much or trying to force the story in a direction that shouldn't be going. So trying to push through it can be the wrong thing. But I think there is value in Louis L'Amour's advice of like, you got to turn on the faucet for the water to run. Where when it comes to storytelling, we have to do the writing, like at least regularly enough that we give ourselves a chance to be able to do the writing. But I love that answer. And I think going for walks is so helpful because it gets the blood flowing. Like, not only is it your body's doing something while your mind is free to wander. But like also you're getting that blood flow into your brain and your extremities, like get the cobwebs out of your brain and like give
Plus
it some
burning calories, so
some oxygen to, you know, do the work that it needs to do. Like that's really beneficial. I need
It
to
sounds peaceful.
do more. Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
when you're a parent, it's hard to find
Resting as
peace.
a walk.
push comes to shove, you know, I mean, sometimes you maybe just need to do a different project as well. Like if you're really struggling with one particular project and you've done it for a long time, and maybe just trying to write something else and then come back to it.
No, absolutely. I love when I'm in different stages on different projects, because you get done with one or stuck with one. You're like, well, I need to think about this and figure this out. Jump to another project that's in a different phase. And you kind of like, it's like you can use different aspects of your brain and energy without like depleting it, because it's like, oh, this one's for editing and this one's more writing the rough draft. And so that can be very helpful.
And I find that sometimes certain scenes in my book will slow me down, kind of bog me down. Like I said, ADHD, I get really bored really quick. And if I'm getting a slow moving chapter, you know, it's harder to write. So sometimes that's, you know, that's when I find those scenes. If I just pick a scene, like at the grocery store, let's have my, you know, protagonist go to the grocery store and maybe they can't find what they're looking for, or, you know, what if there's a robbery happens at the grocery store when they're there? How are they going to deal with it? You know, and just write those little scenes. And sometimes that gets the wheels going, you know, it's like the grease.
What would you say has been your most significant writing victory so far?
I think pressing publish on my first book. I remember, I never shared any of my books with anybody. I wrote hundreds and hundreds of stories for over 30 years. It wasn't until I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD in 2019 that I stopped to think, maybe this is my special interest. And then I got brave and I sent the manuscript for my first book into an editor thinking, okay, the worst they can say is it sucks. And if they say it sucks, then I'll know and I'll move on. But they came back and they told me, so this doesn't suck. You should probably publish. And that was what got me going.
Yeah, and what a victory. I think it's such an accomplishment anytime anyone publishes a book, because like everyone wants to, but it's so much more than you think. Like everyone's like, I have a story in me, but like getting the story out of you is so much involved.
And I remember having, I was talking to one of my readers and they said, aren't you afraid that your stuff is very similar to other people's out there, you know, because it's got magic and adventure and stuff. And I was like, yeah, but I'm writing it different. And even if somebody was writing the same story as me, they're going to write it from a different perspective. I focus on character development.
There's no such thing as copywriting
there's
ideas.
No ideas.
No one can do the same idea twice the same way. Exactly.
They just focus on different aspects of it. And, you know, my writing style or my storytelling style may appeal to some people, but not others. And I have to be cool with that. You know, there's lots of readers of the millions and millions of people out there. You know, there's only a small percentage of those millions that actually write. And then of those millions that actually write, there's only a small portion of them that actually publish. So it's like a 1% of 1% of however many millions of people. But, you know, that it's, I'm writing the story that's in my head and I have to be happy with that.
Now, do you have any writing advice that you hate? Either you think it's like too broad of a brushstroke or just isn't great advice?
I think you can use more than says and asks as dialogue tags. I'm not going to say says softly when I can say whispers, or, you know, I'd like to use, like, if they're angry, I'm not going to say, oh, I hate that, they says, or so-and-so says. I'm going to say, I hate that, I growled, or they growled and stuff, you know. I also, because I've been writing in present tense for so long, I struggle with trying when I do try to write in past tense, and I kind of don't do it anymore. I like that present tense because it feels like things are happening in the moment. There's more immediacy with the risks and perils that are happening in your story. So I don't like past tense. But that being said, I can read it. I just don't like to write it.
Sure. Yeah. We all have preferences. I'm kind of the idea that like good writing is balance, right? Everything is balance. So like I really like said in general because it's like unobtrusive, right? If it's normal dialogue, you're not trying to get across a strong emotion, You just need to know who said
Yes.
what. Like, I can
It was
read
just
that
the
and like not get pulled out
Mhm.
of the story. But I do appreciate the nuanced dialogue tags too of the whispered and
Mhm.
growled to show those strong
Yes.
emotions. Or like, to me, it's just about balance. Like when you,
Oh yeah.
I do laugh at the I've seen it on Facebook, the meme where he's like each intoned vocally, like he's making fun of the more creative tags that like can be very extreme, like where he's like,
Mhm.
why doesn't he just use that he intoned vocally, you know, like I think that's
Yes.
pretty clever. But
Mhm.
everything's about balance. There's no such thing as
Yes.
like never use or always use, like to me.
Yes. And I hate
Mhm.
because I tend to not see all the letters and the words. I hate trying to rely on your spell checker because I've had my character,
Oh
it was pointed
yeah.
out to me, my character was going to go out onto a rampart and assess the situation, but I missed one of the S's at the end, and my editor at the time put a note in there saying, multiple donkeys? Question mark?
Right.
No. I mean, the
So
most
funny,
recent one
yeah.
I had from my 4th book that I'm working on, my editor came back and she says, "Okay, this person is standing in front of this, you know, really intimidating person. Why are they quacking?"
Instead of
No.
quaking, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Yes.
That'll
You have
get
to
you
be really
to
careful
go
when it is an existing word.
when it's
Yes.
close
Yeah.
to a different one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And bad guys are not going to peruse you, they're going to pursue you, and
Right.
you know, and then the proper
Yeah.
the proper spelling, because I mean, I have a hard time with vowel teams
Yeah.
such,
Mhm.
and the letters, you know, kind of mixing around on me and stuff.
Mhm.
So if it's telling me that this word is spelt right, I'm trusting it, and that's why I need
You're
another
gonna go with that.
Mhm. And you get
Yeah.
a
So
lot
do
of
you find
homophones as
that like
well.
yeah, do you find that other fonts help? Because I know some fonts are a nightmare if you're a dyslexic. But I think there are some fonts that are like friendly if you're dyslexic because they make like the P and the G look different. Like they do little things
Hmm.
to help you recognize the letters.
I
That might
haven't
be
tried.
something to look at and
Yeah.
see if like because I know like people are saying like Comic Sans is really helpful for drafting
Okay.
because it's kind of like the silly font you use and you're kind of
Yeah.
not paying, you know, you can be a little bit more free, I think, in writing. And so like I use that trick, but I have heard from some people that like different fonts like Comic Sans can be a little bit easier on the eye if you have dyslexia. I'm not
Okay.
100% sure which fonts are best, but that might be something to look into.
Yeah.
That could be
I'd have to look
helpful.
into that. I've only ever tried like Arial and Times New Roman.
Right.
That's the only ones I've tried because that's
Which
what most
those
people.
are so standardized that like that's where you're gonna have those problems where
Mhm.
like the P and the Q look so alike that it's harder
Yes.
to distinguish
I
them.
do have to have it double spaced, otherwise I get lost from one line to the
Right.
next. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, when I was
Yeah.
growing up, I used to take my book and I'd have my bookmark and I'd put it across here and like move it down to the
Yep.
next line because I get lost getting to the end. And then my teacher come along at the time because they didn't know those things, right? And they said, "No, you're not supposed to read that way." I'm taking it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna use my finger because you can't take that away.
Not,
You know?
Right,
not read that way.
Yeah, exactly. So
Why
I
But if
couldn't
mean,
you
you're
read that way?
definitely
That's how people learn
look
to
at
read
this
with
silly rule.
different conditions.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was back in the I don't want to say when, but yeah, I was old.
No,
At the time, I'm old now, but yeah, it was a long time ago. And I mean, I think there was a kid that was, you know, I've heard of older teachers when they get kids who are left-handed and trying to slap the left-handedness out of them.
Right. I
Mhm.
know,
When I
right,
was in school,
right.
I was in the school at the time when they were still giving the strap. So
Oh yeah. Yeah. Not too far removed from that history.
yes.
Yes, we want to give you the opportunity to let our audience know where they can find out more about you and your books online. So this is a perfect time to share your socials, your website, anything like that.
So you can find everything on my website. It's jmshawauthor.com. Has my books tab has all my books that are listed. I've got 3 books in my series. My 4th one is coming out early next year. And there's links to them on Amazon.com and Amazon.ca. I will be adding Kobo and Barnes and Noble links to them as well. At the bottom of my page on my website, you will find the links to my Instagram, Instagram and Facebook links at the bottom. There's also an email link if you want to email me. I've had people email me with questions about self-publishing or publishing in general or writing, and I don't mind answering questions. You know, probably like you can email me or you can go through my social medias and private message me and such. I have no problems answering questions for people. And as for my books, they're, like I said, they're on Amazon. They're on as a print or an ebook. They're also on Kindle Unlimited and Kobo, Barnes and Noble if you're in the US, and they're on lulu.com. If you're in Canada, they're available in, I think there's about 13 different Indigo chapter stores across Alberta right now. But I think you can contact them maybe and see if they can get some more in their other stores and such. But otherwise, Kobo is through Indigo and Chapters. So.
Okay.
Oh, yes, thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, too. I know everyone's so busy, so we appreciate anyone making the time for us.
Yes, this time of the year is kind of touch and go for most people, but no, it's good.
Right. Yeah, it's been such a fun time talking with you. So thanks again for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I have a lot of fun. I like to talk about myself, you know.
Yeah, who doesn't?
And
right?
we love hearing about it. You're very insightful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'll try.
And thank you to everyone who's listening along at home. Remember, there's more than one way up the mountain. And if you're our next episode airs Friday as usual. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, you can find us on social media at The Talnut Show or email us at thetalnutshow@gmail.com. Thanks again for watching.
Thanks again for listening. If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing and liking. We appreciate all the support. Julia J.K. Allen is an author, editor, and coach and can be found at hijinksrudder.com.
Kirsha Fox is an author, avid reader, gamer, and mother to 4, and you can find her at kirshafox.com. Thanks and see you next time.